for ethics. They include, among other things, identifying and analyzing ethical issues, determining alternatives to ethical problems, evaluating alternatives consistent with moral reasoning. This signals the school's commitment to producing alumni who are aware of their ethical responsibilities in the workplace and outside the workplace. Mr. Lanier's endowment of $500,000 will support the study of business ethics, further demonstrating the school's commitment to ethics and strengthening its reputation for ethics scholarship, enhancing the profile of both the school and the university. It's therefore most fitting for the inaugural lecture to be delivered by none other than Mr. Lanier himself, who will be introduced to you by one of our own rising sophomores, Mr. Daniel James Victor. Daniel.
When I was asked to introduce today's speaker, I must admit, I did not know anything about Mr. Willie E. Lanier. So I asked around, I did some research, I watched his football highlights, and now I am ready to introduce to you one of the most distinguished alumnus of Morgan State University. See, Mr. Lanier is exactly what the Earl G. Graves School of Business and Management is all about. He took his opportunity as a walk-on for the Morgan State football team and turned it into a career in the National Football League. And then in 1986, this Super Bowl champion joined a truly exclusive club as one of only 295 players in the Professional Football Hall of Fame. Now, a common misconception about athletes is that they know how to take care of business on the field, but they fail to transfer that same game plan and bring it into the boardroom. Not Mr. Lanier. Armed with his bachelor's degree from Morgan State University in Business Administration and additional training from the Darden School of Business at the University of Virginia, number 63 for the Kansas City Chiefs made a clean transition from the field into being a successful financial consultant for Wachovia Bank. See, playing middle linebacker, Willie Lanier took his ability to read the offense's plays and signals and transferred it into his ability to read the financial market. He took his grit on the gridiron and he brought it into the boardroom. He took his nose for the ball and he showed investors that he has a nose for the financial services industry. He left Wachovia after 25 years as a senior vice president with over $60 million in assets under management. Mr. Lanier attributes his success in both fields to his elite class of ethics. That is why he has established a $500,000 gift, the Willie E. Lanier Senior Endowed Lectureship in Business Ethics in the Earl G. Graves School of Business and Management. So, ladies and gentlemen, please stand and join me in welcoming home Mr. Willie E. Lanier.
Let me get this on. Is it on? Thank you. No, it doesn't seem to be. This one is on. Thank you for that fine introduction. Before I give you my comments, I have two individuals here that I've known over a lot of my life. The first one is Mark Gamble, founder and chairman of Carey Street Partners in Richmond, Virginia. He was with Wheat First Securities when I first came to the firm many years ago. So Mr. Gamble will bring comments to you, and then Troy Vincent from the NFL and then once they've concluded their remarks, I'll have a chance to offer you mine. Thank you.
I'll just do it from here, if it's all right. I'm Mark Gamble. It's a pleasure to be here today. It's a real honor. Willie has been a friend and a colleague of mine since 1981 when he joined what was then Wheat First Securities, the predecessor firm to what became Wachovia Securities. I met him shortly after he joined as what I call him, our most famous trainee. That was after his wonderful career in football, and he was ready for a new challenge. So he wanted to be a trainee in the brokerage world. He did a great job over the years with us, and it was a wonderful experience. I can tell you that Willie is loved in Richmond, but he is revered in Kansas City still. All you have to do is go out there. Our son Mac and I went out to a couple of home games over the years with Willie, and it was a moving experience. He was just, people followed him and pointed him out, and he stopped and talked to everybody, which is one of his great traits. And as it was mentioned, he was made a member of the Hall of Fame, but he has stayed active in football since that time. More than just getting the knowledge, accolade, he has stayed active in the game. He was on several committees, including the Helmet Safety Committee, which has had a lot of attention of late. In 1994, he was named one of the 75 greatest players ever in the game of football. And there's a wonderful book that was published by the NFL at the time, and each player got his own page. Well, our son was, he was 8 years old at the time, and he had Willie, he just adored Willie. So they had a special banquet in New York, and Willie took the book to New York and got 13 of those players to sign their page for Mac. While at Wheat, Willie became chairman of one of our subsidiary companies. We had a subsidiary that owned a couple of companies, and that was called TDS Automotive. And TDS Logistics, they formed a minority subsidiary to take advantage of set-asides for minority-owned companies. And Willie became chairman. And during his tenure as chairman of that business, revenues went from $13 million to about $110 million. Profits went up even more, and it was sold a couple of times to private equity groups. Now, here's the ethical moment. Willie was, the way the deal was structured, he did not participate in the upside. And he fought hard for that and put his own money at risk, and it took 2 years, but he was rewarded. And it was concluded that he was right. So I salute you for following your ethical path. When Willie turned 70, it's been in the paper, it's no secret. When he turned 70, the Times-Dispatch in Richmond did a special feature on him. And it said, Willie Lanier turned 70. But I think one of the greatest comments was, and I've got to read this to you, he is as well known today as ever. But he wears his fame with humility. Willie, honored to be your friend.
Thank you.
I think Mark said it best. My name is Troy Vincent. I happen to be a former player. Had the opportunity to play 15 years, and when having the opportunity on behalf of the National Football League and the commissioner, Willie is a standard. He's a distinguished member of your alumni. Mr. Wilson, thank you for allowing me to come on campus today. You call him a distinguished alumni. Willie set the bar. What Willie did for pro sports, in particular for men of color, he was a true trailblazer. He allowed us, and quite frankly, being today the highest ranking former player in the history of the National Football League, that's because Willie blazed the trail. We talk about ethics, we talk about morals, the moral high character. I consult with Willie, he's a friend, he's a mentor. He sets the bar. He allows me to go into a room with confidence. I've learned over time watching how he interacts with our counterparts. Willie sets the standard of what a professional athlete should be and what he could be. I was always taught, Grandma used to always say, you know what you can be by what you see. You know what you can be by what you see. And because of Willie and his efforts, not just on the field, but what he represented professionally, as a student athlete and as a professional on the field, the playing field and beyond, he allowed me to dream and to see something different in myself. Willie, thank you for setting the standard for the National Football League as you consult with the commission ourselves on player health and safety, playing rules. But quite frankly, you said it best as we were going through our tumultuous, I would say, time in the last 36 months. Set the standard, and the standard is excellence. Don't compromise. Willie, thank you. God bless you. I'm looking forward to hearing you speak.
Thank both of you for your wonderful comments. I would like to thank all of you for being here today, taking time out of your schedule and appreciating all that is occurring here at the Earl Grey School of Business and the Willie Lanier Lectureship today. It's interesting for me to think about what things I might say to you today as I reflected on 1963 when I arrived at Cold Spring Lane and Hillen Road, trying to imagine what it might be in a future, as Troy mentioned, or rather Mark mentioned, as a walk-on at Morgan State College. I was not a scholarship athlete. I was someone who desired to make a difference, to take a chance to go forward from Richmond, Virginia with hopes and dreams and aspirations. So with that being the case, I was able to come to this university, have a chance to try out for a team, but it wasn't about the athletics. It was always about the academics. And with it always being about the academics, it was what could you do, how well could you do it, and who could you become? Now, in addition to that, I think there were so many things going on in our country at that time, because that same weekend, I Have a Dream speech, Washington, D.C., Martin Luther King was happening in Washington. My father was concerned with driving through Washington at that time because of maybe unrest that could occur with that. So we ended up coming the next day. But all of that was a beginning of a journey. Now, for me to stand here, to have the ability to extend a gift to this university is a long arc of time. And what I will do with some of this time is to give you certain ethical moments along the way, not many because there are vast numbers for all of you, but for the students who are here, for them to hear and see and realize that you have nothing that detracts from being here. You have all that is required for you to be and sit and do anywhere in the world. And that has to be the view that you take with you, that what you want to do in an ethical manner is to achieve greatness as long as you breathe air. And I say it like that because, yes, as Mark mentioned, I'm 70 years of age, and I'm still wide open, waiting for tomorrow to get here, to embrace it as strongly as I've embraced anything else, and trying to have it define who you are. Because until you leave with God's call, you are striving to do His work. So with that being said, it was interesting, and I pointed out to Mark Gamble, and Troy will appreciate this point because he knows the football background. Holmes Hall, in the center of campus, the clock tower. 1967, Willie Lanier, drafted by the Kansas City Chiefs, the 50th player in the United States, drafted in the second round. The Chiefs had a player who happened to be white from Notre Dame named Jim Lynch. drafted, second round, 48th player drafted. So the thing about education and the importance of education is to have knowledge. Because with knowledge you can make better decisions. With knowledge you can challenge anyone about what they say to you. And that becomes a base of how you have to develop yourself to go forward. So with the fact that all contracts in the National Football League are signed by the team, the individual, and the league. So with that being the case, there were many who thought that the youngsters who attended historically black colleges would not know what the true numbers were. How could you know? You went to a black school. So the benefit was that the first black executive in the National Football League was Buddy Young. And Buddy Young and my college coach, Earl Banks, were high school classmates. So Jim's contract came to the league very soon after the draft. Buddy Young pulled his contract and observed what the numbers were. And Buddy Young called my coach, and we became aware because it was knowledge. So I don't have to go into what the numbers were, but the knowledge gave rise to your ability to function. Now the next thing that happens is that, and I would make this my first ethical moment from a business standpoint because sport is business. But even before I get there, as a senior at Morgan, I had done a senior class paper on the monopolistic aspects of pro football because it was going to affect me with the common draft being the first one and all the things went on in Washington. That's how I approached the sport. So in front of Holmes Hall, a representative of Kansas City Chiefs who happened to be African American came to this campus and spoke to me about a contract that was probably 90% less or 70% less than what Jim's had been, and then in a very foul way, spoke to me in a very improper manner and said that if I didn't take what they were offering with certain words that I would not share, I could take my whatever to Canada to play football. So with that, being 21 years of age on this campus, I can't be here today unless I do what I did then. And what I said to him was, at first, no one speaks to me that way. Three things will happen. I will not go to Canada to play football. You need to go back to Kansas City, tell them they sent the wrong, some other words to see me. And I will sue you all for trying to take away my right to earn a living by threatening me on this campus. I called the coach of the Kansas City Chiefs the next day, Hank Stram, and I explained to him that my name is Willie Lanier, graduating senior at Morgan State College. The only thing important to me is to graduate from the school. If you think that you can send someone to disrespect me, you're wrong, because I did not come to play football. I came to get a degree that meant I could challenge anybody in the world. And I could challenge them with numbers and information and data in a way that, regardless of how you want to define me, I know what my skills are. And I can benefit any organization, and I will not have that occur. So as I talked to Stram and explained that to him in a most not judicious way, I made my comments and said that I never need to come to Kansas City. I might never play pro football. I hung the phone up. And mine was not trying to act out something. It was a moment that someone felt that what they had was more important to me than what I had and what I was doing. And it can never work like that. You are here to embrace all that a university can offer. I was writing some things down. My wife Barbara was here on the way up, and I was thinking back about many years ago after the Civil War, since this was the 150th celebration of the end of the Civil War. Being in Richmond, there were a lot of stories written about that, but it was very interesting because these colleges came to life after the end of the Civil War. But what I would say is that I'm not sure anybody expected us to do as well as we did in these institutions. That what we are able to achieve, what we are able to present with ethics as an undergirding factor in the way you go about your business is something that people don't know how to imagine. I came to a sport where I'm 70, but it's not like I'm ancient. It's not. So I came there in 1967, but I'm the first African-American middle linebacker to play pro football. So what I do know is that I don't think that I'm the only and the best to ever be there. So how do I manage a relationship where others had not been given an opportunity and do it in a manner where they have to accept who I am? So I decided that if I looked at an error rate as a penalty, that if I eliminated penalties from the way I play, or for you as students to eliminate any error in your work every day, any error in your work every day. If you eliminate penalties from your work, your professor has to look at you and go, wow, there's something about you that's different. So with that, over 11 years, I had 5 penalties in 11 years. So that meant if you played next to me and you had more than that, I'm going to ask the coach to get you off the team. I don't want you to play at all with me. Because at the end of the moments, what happened is that we lose because we have not maintained excellence at a very high level. As Mark mentioned, TDS US Logistics was an automotive logistics company based here in the United States, and we had contracts to manage the flow of materials in 9 facilities in this country. In Norfolk, Virginia, we had a contract managing the parts to build 1,000 units a day. So in building 1,000 units a day, I would say to you, if I'm hiring a group from this room, that your standards have to be so high that you can only have errors at my rate of 5 errors in 11 years. If there's something called Six Sigma, Lean, Kaizen, which is an organizational statistical tool, then if Toyota was the best in the world with 15 parts per million defect, then we could be equal and better than that, and we were. So the reality is that there might be Willie known from sport, but it was all about education. I started an MBA program at the University of Missouri in Kansas City in 1967 because I didn't want to get behind other graduates in the business school as they went forward to Wharton and other schools, and I was playing a sport. So there were other activities that were constantly related to the academic side of what you happened to do. But you were the one driving that because others, maybe on the sports side, were not pushing it. They saw it as maybe getting in the way of something that doesn't make sense, because the only way you can be successful is to have mature people. The only way you can be successful is to have those who have the character, the ethics, the strength of achieving, and then you have a chance to do more and better. But to have less than that, all you do is give yourself a time that goes forward, and at the end of the period you look and you didn't quite get there. You didn't quite get there, and you wonder what happened. Well, if you aren't managing a process efficiently and have individuals around who have great interest in many things, and it's not one where you study the syllabus or the study guide and feel that that means you have achieved all that's necessary. You must be engaged in as many things as you can find. One of the things that I do is to serve on the NFL Safety Committee, and on that committee, it really goes back to when I was growing up because my parents had the American Medical Journal in our home. So with having the American Medical Journal in our home, I knew a lot about everything that was medical. I knew all the questions to ask. I understood the terminology. So Troy appreciates this point. I'm 70 years of age and nothing's wrong with me. And that is from having played a sport where many of the gentlemen, unfortunately, have issues. I have no pain from having played. All the body parts, I have no surgeries or replacements. I played a game in a very challenging manner, which is the same thing you have to do about business, and then you have to have the ethical view of what you will and will not do. And you will challenge anybody if they attempt to have you think that you should do something outside of your benefit for their benefit. So you don't have to be judicious about it either, and I'll say it like that. But with that kind of point of view, the journey from there to here is still fraught with challenges that are life's journeys. It's never smooth. But if you have the ability and the background, if you have multiple things you've done to build your confidence and your base of confidence, your ability then to be someone in future time that might stand here, your ability to be able to clarify why the journey was as it was, how you were able to achieve outcomes as they are. That was an issue that Mark spoke about as it related to a structure of a business that I was able to deliver to others a certain economic benefit of a very large company. And they attempted to do something from a legal standpoint that was going to basically cut me out. And I wondered who they think they were dealing with, because that was not my programming, obviously. So we engaged in 2.5 years of a legal matter, federal court up in Michigan, which is fine. It is published somewhere, so even though I was trying to sign a non-disclosure, non-compete. So the point is that if your resolve is not clear, if your mind is not pure, if the things you reach for are challenged, if you don't reach to offset that, then a moment such as this, for me, might not have occurred. Now, one of the names that I had not mentioned yet is a gentleman named Jim Gilliam. And James Gilliam, whose theater is named for his parents over at the Fine Arts Center, was a classmate of mine. Jim passed about 10, 11 years ago. And in the year 2000, Jim gave $1.5 million to our school. I could not have been more proud of anyone than I was of Jim and seeing what he had done for this institution and what it had done for him. So our approach, his approach, my approach, Earl Graves before us, who has this wonderful school, business school named for him, to see his family here, and God has blessed all of us to be able to do and achieve these things today, is one of the seminal, wonderful moments of my journey. My plan is never defined because God has hold of that, and I'm enjoying the ride and trying to do as much as I can for any and everybody. So I'm not sure how many minutes that was because I tend to track them at times. But Dr. Bogosian, I appreciate what you're doing at this institution. I support and will continue to support as much as I can those different things that are occurring. I think that having the New York Stock Exchange presented is important here. And the thing that I'll say to you as students is that the person standing here, and there's a picture somewhere that I had sent Dr. Bogosian, because in 1997, I had the gavel at the New York Stock Exchange. And I came from Morgan State College. And there aren't many people who ever have the gavel at the close of business. At the close of business in the bastion of capitalism in our country. So that becomes the comments that I offer today. The thing that I noticed when I came in was that I tend to think I'm cool and I can handle everything, but I noticed I had a few butterflies that meant that you're getting ready to do something that you're a little bit unsure. It's new to you, and if you think about each day, they will always be new to you. So maybe that should be a part of your understanding about yourself, that you never reach a point that that next day doesn't cause you a little anxiety. So I thank you all for the time that you have offered me to speak. And Dr. Bogosian, is there any questions that we will have with this or what?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Lanier. We appreciate your dedication to excellence. This message is build quality in, build excellence in along the way. Don't wait until the end to be inspected if you will detect it. So that's the takeaway I got from you, and we appreciate that. Speaking of that photo of yours at the New York Stock Exchange, it will be on display out here on our screen for a very long time to come. Now, we are at the moment where we will open up the floor for questions. We have some microphones, individuals that our students with microphones, so if you have questions, if you raise your hand and we will recognize you, we'll start here. Thank you.
Well, I was wondering, could you share with the group, I think back in Morgan, you sustained an injury. Remember that?
Yeah.
When you had to work through that. Could you share how you worked through that injury and also then to go on to where you are now?
The question was about an injury that I had here in Morgan. And the benefit to having an injury is that it clarifies very quickly what you are and what you are not. If you are depending on your body to earn your living, that's not the best thing. Because all you need is a knee injury, and I missed 3/4 of the season my sophomore year, and that clarified you must have your degree to give you the opportunity to go forward in a positive manner. So that was the great side of that particular point and that particular injury. So with that, I was able to go on and have a career that I had a substantial head injury my first year, and that clarified also that you must be doing things other than sport to give yourself a chance at a future. But it's all been very interesting in terms of your educational background, how you use it, how you pay attention to the fact that if you want to subject yourself to risk, and all it has to be is an ankle or elbow or shoulder, then that's not a good choice. If you have, as I like to say, the words all rights and privileges thereto appertaining. If you have those words spoken to you, you then have the ability to compete with anybody, anywhere for the rest of your life. So that becomes the point in reference to that.
Any other questions?
Hello, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay. I'll stand up.
Okay.
My voice carries. Well, Mr. Lanier, you are a role model for all of us, for former athletes, business executives, students, everyone in this room, and we appreciate you for that. My question is around what's happening with corporate America. You look at Volkswagen with the emissions issue. You look at Toyota, the airbag. And I would like to just get your thoughts on what is the real social responsibility for corporations, and especially in this global environment. It's just not the Fortune 500 anymore. It's companies from all over the world.
I'm glad you asked that question, because that was a program that Mark and I attended at the Darden School at the University of Virginia. I was there in 1975 as the first minority. Mark was there in the mid-'80s. And that was a professor, Dr. Alex Horniman, that taught behavioral science and ethics. So the place that I then got the booster shot in terms of this word called ethics came from UVA. And I'm glad you asked that, because I meant to have him incorporate in the comments. Those companies need to send their executives there and places like that to have a clarity of what their responsibilities are for their consumers. Period. It's a real simple reality. And then the thing that's so shocking is that you could have, how many people would have to know that these issues were occurring and then have that presented into the marketplace? Now, here's one about emissions, but then what about General Motors and the ignition switch? Right. People lose their lives. But what about Ralph Nader 30, 40 years ago? All he was trying to do was save people's lives with airbags. But I think he was somewhat vilified, for whatever reason, in this country. Safety and health, we didn't tend to work well with that. So doing right is a wonderful thing. And those who choose not to need to feel the harshness of outcomes that are not in their favor. And I think that's the only way I could frame that.
We're going to send you to go talk to them.
Yeah.
student asked a question.
Well, there's a student. Okay, please.
Good afternoon, Mr. Lanier.
Yes.
My question has to do with critical race issues. When you played for the NFL, not specifically what issues did you have to deal with, but more so, what advice would you give to us as students, undergraduates, graduate students, traditional and non-traditional, with regard to dealing with race at that level?
Well, it's sort of interesting as you ask that question with what's happening in our country so far this week. I happen to have been in Kansas City this past weekend, and I was interviewed by a television station on some card show activity, but then they asked about the University of Missouri. They asked about the students there talking in terms of not playing unless the president resigned for a lot of issues that dealt with race. The thing that was surprising to me was that this was not an isolated moment of time, and that was a continuum of long time standing. Now, I don't know how to be anything more than confused with that, because if you have a board of visitors at a university, I was on the board of visitors at Virginia State for 8 years, and we were trying to be attuned to anything that's going on at the university, and to have incidences of that kind occur, it lets you know that those things, yes, do occur. But I think the reality is that in this way, as long as you don't touch me, you can say what you want to say. Because I'm going to take care of me and my responsibility, and I cannot allow someone external to me to think their words can control me. I must maintain my dignity to go forward for myself and my family. I must maintain my dignity to go forward. So that's how I would have to phrase that comment, because even going back to the time in Kansas City, early on, where activities like that occur. I'll make a point about last Saturday night in Kansas City. The Negro Leagues Museum, baseball, is based in Kansas City. Each year, they have an outstanding person to come and have a chat, so to speak. So I happened to be sitting in a room where Hank Aaron was there, 84 years of age. Now, if you want to talk about someone, I'm 70, he's 84. All right? Therefore, whatever it is you just asked me, a 70-year-old guy, right? You then ask him, an 84-year-old guy in America, and how was it for you as you went about your work? Oh, and I'll make a point, and this is economics in its entirety. The Negro Leagues existed as an economic engine in cities all across the United States of America. Young men who were African American saw an open door for them to show their skills and ability to possibly work. The cream of the crop happened with integration to go to the major leagues. The other league, the Negro League teams disappeared. There are only 8% African American players in baseball today. So it is incumbent upon all of us to think more broadly about many of these factors as to how they truly affect the broad numbers of people who might be involved. So Hank offered some interesting commentary, but as he said, when he was going for the record to break Babe Ruth's record, when he was getting death threats and all of that type of thing, and think about it, he had to be out on the field of play, open to anyone who might have issue. But God protects you, and you keep going and fulfilling his dreams for you.
There are a couple of questions at the back, and then we'll get to Dr. Wilson here.
Whatever, it's my time. My time now?
Hello.
Yes, sir.
Hello, sir. With all the success that you had, what keeps you so humble?
The thing that keeps me humble is that I wasn't always humble. Yeah, you don't ever want to create a false view. Willie is a human being like everybody else, so Willie has his joys, his ups, his downs, his sideways, whatever. But you try to stay on the right side most of the time that gives you an opportunity to continue to go forward in a positive way.
Go ahead, please. We have a question here. Just 1 second, please.
Good afternoon, Mr. Lanier.
Part-time?
Yes, please.
Look, I relate to your time. I guess I was here about 10 years before you. And I say it that way because I'm very interested in your career, Kansas City, the things that you went through. My basic question here is, I'd like to have your view. What's going on today across sports, but basically in NFL, with regard to concussions? Can you give us a broad view as to how you think things are being handled? In addition to that, do you think that it's going to, in the future, really affect how the game is going to be played, or whether the game will, and this has to do with money, will exist 50 years from now?
Well, the 50-year one is too clairvoyant for me, doing that for hours. But I think the reality is that I'm on the Safety Committee with the National Football League. We meet monthly. Most of the time, Goodell is on the call. We meet in person at Canton, Ohio, and Roger will be there. It's serious about what we're trying to accomplish. Young people have to understand, whenever they start to play, that you can damage yourself playing a sport, but you have to improve how you do it. My history was that I had a severe concussion in my first year that became undetected subdural hematoma, and I collapsed and was out for 2 hours. Sent to Mayo Clinic for all the neurological tests. Had a chance to decide that if and when I played again, I would have to be 90% safe or I would not have played. But I understood how to play the game, keeping one's head up. For anyone who has children playing, or any of you who are playing, your head must be up at all times, not once in a while, all times, and you must see what you hit. Because in the same way the automotive industry built airbags into cars, you go 100 miles an hour and hit a pole. We'll come see you. So in the same way with the sport, if you don't make decisions to change, there's nothing that can protect you. Yeah, I mean, seriously, it is just that simple. And unfortunately, as we continue to move the needle, I will call it, it keeps getting better. I spent a half an hour last night, I mentioned this to Troy, watching a DVD from the league on Luke Kuechly, who was a linebacker down in Charlotte, who had an injury his first game, and we'll probably have some discussion of that. So what I'll do is just try to offer my view, my commentary, as to the changes, it appears that he has made, and how you have to keep that process going. But it has to be something that's done when people are young. And I think some statistics tend to show that there might start to be some decrease in youngsters playing football. But I think with the feeling that safety is the paramount, that is being done for children and youngsters or parents, and parents feel good about what they see, or in the same way we talk about automotive industry. If it is doing the things that it needs to do to make the vehicle safer, people will say, okay, you can drive it. But if they were not doing it, you probably wouldn't advise your child to be engaged in it. You're welcome.
Thank you. The young man back there, please.
Good afternoon again, Mr. Lanier. I guess if you think about it, all these issues, ethics, corporate social responsibility, racial issues, can all be subsumed into the broader concept of sustainability. So I'm interested in what your opinion is on how sustainability should and could be, better implemented in university programs such as ours.
Well, when you define the sustainability, how are you defining the phase of sustainability?
So generally, when you think of sustainability, it's just proactive environmentalism and these things. But my idea of sustainability is a much broader concept that pulls all these issues about ethics and all these different things.
Well, I think that if we're here today in 2015, these discussions have gone on, as I mentioned, since 1963, and if you look at what changes have occurred over those arcs of time, and you see what parts of sustaining aspects go from one period to another. So if you look at the moral issues, the ethical issues, the requirements for being studious, the requirement for outcomes that are even larger than yourself, the requirements of being a part of a system that is going to give you that which you need to be better in the future, you're trying to do that. You're trying to sustain, and the university is trying to offer you ways to sustain you now and into that future. Because as I was talking to Bert Hash as we were coming over here, it's been almost 50 years since I came, and we can only imagine what it will look like 50 years from now, the individuals who populate this place and things they are trying to achieve.
Dr. Wilson?
Actually, I have a question about revenue gains. I want to take you back, Willie, to your era at Morgan. During the time that you played here, HBCUs were attracting the best black athletes in the country, here and across the nation. And our athletic programs were very strong programs. And we now are at a point where the more resource institutions have, quote unquote, a more attractive product and promises to athletes to put them on television and do all the things that, unfortunately, we can't do. And as a result of that, many of the HBCUs are playing what they call revenue games, meaning they will schedule someone for a paycheck, $800,000, $900,000, but the athletic competitiveness is just not equal. And so I had a conversation here with Coach Hull, and we pretty much said, you know, we're going to slowly move out of the revenue game business because of some of the issues that you talked about, your health of athletes, but it's an integrity piece, it's an ethical piece. So I was just curious as to whether you had any opinions on what you're seeing now with regard to the way institutions like Morgan that produced you and other Hall of Famers are at a point where, in order for athletic departments to remain somewhat competitive, you're almost forced to schedule a competitor that is so far from you athletically, but the money is driving the decision.
Well, I think since the lectureship is on ethics, and the view that I have is that drawing away from that would make sense to me unless I have the talented individuals who can really play and feel that we have a chance to truly win other than just the dollar. Because to do less than that, does that mean that the student athlete you have here is better or worse than the student athlete they have there? Because who they have there might not be who you would have here. All right? So that being said, it's one that if we collectively succumb to doing that which someone else does for $1, then we have put ourselves in the crosshairs of something in the future that can't be good. So with that being said, and I'll make a point, when I was at Mayo Clinic, I came back to Kansas City and told the team that there were some things I would never do to play. One, I would never take a cortisone shot. 2, I would never have a pain pill. 3, I would never have a knee drain. Y'all won't touch me. And I was as serious as I could be. I would have walked away at any time. So my reality, and it hasn't been a smooth journey all the way for me, because I'll draw a line. And I'll draw it, and I'll stand with it, and I'll be okay with that. So that's how I would answer that.
Thank you. We'll take 2 final questions, please.
Good afternoon, Mr. Lanier.
Yes, sir.
Given your financial expertise, I have a question towards global market. What does China's recent currency evaluation mean for the global market, and what effect might it have on our business and economy here in America?
That's a wonderful question. As far as my knowledge of the currency evaluation in China and what it might or might do as it affects the U.S. economy, and that could be based on short-term interest rates being raised by the Federal Reserve. I'm not as sure exactly how all of that ties together. My background is that I'm not an economist. Okay, so I'll just frame it like that. So I have awareness of the situation in China, those things are going on, but not one that I would have an answer for you as if though I happen to be an authority on that particular area. But thank you for asking anyway.
One last question, please. The young lady there in the middle.
Hello, Mr. Lanier. My name is Kelly Edmonds. I'm a junior accounting major here in the Grace Honors Program.
Yes, ma'am.
My question for you is, what would you say has been your biggest takeaway from attending Morgan that has resonated with you throughout your life and career?
The biggest takeaway was that I could compete with anybody, anywhere. And I'm not talking about athletically. I'm talking about the quality of education that I received at this institution, the ability to, and I'll put it like this, when I first came back to take an entrance exam, and I ended up scoring the top 10% income in freshman class, therefore I could start my accounting part of my business major in that first year. It was one that you do the work, you gain the benefit of the outcome, you are supported by those who will try to extend for you as many parts of a worldview as they can. You capture that, then your confidence always needs to come to life. And that's the thing that I gained from being here. That's why I'm here today. That's why I was comfortable making a gift, and I was hoping it'd be more than that, because I saw, again, one of my classmates who was able to do exactly the question that you asked. He went to Wilmington, Delaware, when the Fine Arts Center was open. He invited former President of the United States, William Jefferson Clinton. He invited Joe Biden that I met there. He invited Mikulski from Maryland, and they came. So my point of reference was that someone who sat in the same classrooms as I was able to have that kind of reach because he gained the same thing that I gained, and that was the quality of the education, but the confidence that goes along with it.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're not done yet, please. If you look at the program, closing remarks will be given by Dr. Wilson, our president. Dr. Wilson, please.
Well, first of all, let me once again congratulate Willie Lanier. You know, Willie Lanier is the true embodiment of really what we are all about here at Morgan. He has really lived, and he continues to live, the great values of this institution. Leadership, excellence, integrity, respect, if you will, all on a foundation of strong applicable principles. And that is really what this great university has been about for almost 150 years. And as you were talking, Willie, Troy Vincent leaned over to me, and I'm not violating confidence. And he said, President Wilson, the NFL has not seen anyone closer or closest to you in terms of what you represent. And so not only have you been transformational, if you will, in the way you have presented yourself on the gridiron, but all of those characteristics
that Morgan State University is holding high for all of our students. We say to our athletes here that we want you to do three things. We want you to win in the classroom. We want you to win on the gridiron. And we want you to win in life. Those are the three messages that we give. And you are absolutely the embodiment of all of that. And so, here's what I would ask. I feel a very, very quick comment, sir. First of all, I want you to go back to 5 penalties in 11 years. I want to make sure that I heard that correctly, so I know before I said it. Did he say 5 penalties in 11 years? So I want each of us to kind of reflect back on our own careers, whether we are retired or whether we are in the middle of those careers unfolding. Can we really say that throughout our entire career, we've only made 5 mistakes? That's amazing, if you will, and it speaks to your discipline. And I don't want that to be lost, because discipline is very, very important to success, and I think you reminded us of that. The second and last point is that I want to take you back to 1967, because when we had Will Lanier here to be our Founders Day convocation speaker, it was an amazing address, much in the same way that you hear him today. But here's sort of what he said that resonated with me. When he was drafted by the Kansas City Chiefs, 1967 out there, coming out of Oregon with a degree in business, the first thing that he did, one of the first things that he did when he got there, was that he went to enroll in an MBA program at the University of Missouri, Kansas City. I want you to just kind of think about that now. The first thing, here's a person who's just signed, was it a multi-billion-dollar contract? It was a contract. You guys do it. But here's a person who's just signed this great contract with this NFL team and basically did it on his own terms. And then went there not thinking, if you will, that this is my work. He's already preparing himself for becoming a CEO and doing all those things that he do the next 35 or 40 years would demand of him. So, give a round of applause to a person who's able to look into the future, if you will, and prepare himself for that. Again, the absolute that it is really something special when someone has come through our institution and they have recognized the great value that they have received from that education. And then they say, it's time to give back. And that's what you did. And you have given back big time. And I don't want that to get lost, that you have endowed here a lectureship in ethics for $500,000. And that is a great investment in Morgan. As we go going forward, we will continue to grow that. And on behalf of this entire university, our alumni, our students, our board of regents, our faculty, our students, our supporters, our friends, we just want to say we're enormously proud of everything that you have done and appreciate tremendously the great contribution and investment that you're making back home. And continue good luck to you. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen,